She posted it while still standing in the doorway, suitcase wheels barely stopped. One hand on her hip, the other holding her phone at that smug, tilted angle, like a sorority girl reliving her glory days. Her caption? My husband can cry. I'm still going. All caps. With a champagne emoji. And a geotag of Napa Valley. Friday night. A few feet away, I was still chewing the last bite of my reheated chicken marsala when my phone buzzed with the notification. The worst part? It wasn't rage I felt. Not even heartbreak. It was secondhand embarrassment. Like watching someone fart at a funeral and pretend it was part of the ceremony. She'd made me a punchline, and not even a clever one. I looked up at her, not saying a word. She didn't notice. She was too busy smirking at her own reflection in the glass oven door, adjusting her blouse for maximum cleavage. Then she turned and left. Slammed the door like she won something. I put down my fork, wiped my mouth with a napkin like it was a goddamn press conference, and walked upstairs. Quiet. Controlled. Not the kind of storm you see coming. More like the pressure drop before a tornado. I packed deliberately. Not everything. Just what mattered. The hard drive in the safe. The envelope labeled Ethics, Q4 Backup. The flash drive taped to the back of the medicine cabinet. She never noticed it, too busy hiding her skincare receipts from our joint account. I left behind my wedding ring. Not out of drama. Just didn't feel like mine anymore. The guest bedroom I moved into had dust on the blinds and a sink that squealed when the faucet turned. But it had something our master bedroom hadn't in months, peace. And a lock she couldn't pick with perfume and a half-assed apology. By midnight, her post had over 2,000 likes and 112 comments. I scrolled through them, expressionless. Her girlfriends were egging her on. Yas queen, teach him. Let him cry. Babe, you're the boss. Client trips are self-care. Self-care. Sure. If self-care came with a corporate card, shared hotel rooms, and a pattern of late-night reimbursements filed 3 days after she got back. But it wasn't the comments that made me pause. It was who liked the post. Her boss. Her company's director of operations. A board member. Interesting. That's when I opened the encrypted folder on my laptop. The one I'd started the night she told me her client needed her in San Diego for a weekend to brainstorm synergy. Whatever that means. The folder was called For Later. Inside, time-stamped screenshots, itineraries, dinner logs, invoices. Even the spa treatment in Big Sur she said was a gift from her friend. I know. I booked it. Before I dove in, I glanced at the analytics on this story you're listening to. Over 90% of you won't hit subscribe. And yeah, it's easy to forget. But every time you do, it tells my team these stories are worth building. So if you're in it with me, hit that button. We're just getting started. I leaned back, stared at the screen, and for the first time in a long time, smiled. Not the kind of smile that says, I'm fine. No, the kind that means the chessboard just shifted, and your opponent didn't notice the queen is no longer where she thought she left it. Her flight was at 6:45 a.m. First class. Paid by the client. Napa Valley Resort, 2 nights. Wine tasting. Couples massage. Room with a private terrace. That last one made me laugh. Bold, really. Booking the romance suite and calling it business. I knew what she'd do when she got there. She'd toast with overpriced Pinot, take softlit selfies, and roll her eyes if he made another joke about getting her out of that house. I didn't need to follow her stories. I'd seen this movie before. But this time, I wasn't just the husband waiting at home. This time, I'd already started rewriting the ending. She got home around 11:40 p.m., heels clicking against the tile like applause she didn't earn. Laughed to herself as she tossed her jacket on the banister, keys clattering onto the entryway table. Probably still giddy from whatever flirty, buzz nonsense she and her client giggled about over dessert. There was a faint scent of tobacco on her. He smoked cigars, the expensive kind you can't pronounce without sounding like a fraud. She hated smoke. Or used to. The house was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that means everyone's asleep. The kind that means something's off. Still, she didn't notice. She called out my name once, half-hearted, like someone looking for their sunglasses, not their husband. Then she saw the note on the counter. It was short. 5 sentences. Neat handwriting. No rage, no blame. I needed space. You've got all the attention now. Enjoy it. Don't worry, the house is paid through August. Take care. She read it twice, then scoffed like it was beneath her. Like I was some teenage boy pouting because his girlfriend danced with another guy. She probably expected I'd come crawling back by morning. Or better yet, she'd get to play the victim. He just left me, can you believe that? Instant sympathy from her brunch circle. But the toothbrush was gone. The keys were gone. My laptop, charger, And that worn folder I always kept under the desk drawer, gone. She didn't notice the safe was open, or that the envelope labeled W-2s was actually filled with itemized reimbursements she submitted from joint vacations disguised as client retreats. She poured herself a glass of wine, the same bottle I'd been saving for our anniversary. She drank it barefoot, scrolling through her own Instagram story, paused to laugh at a boomerang of her clinking glasses with Mr. Synergy Solutions. Caption: working overtime, face blowing a kiss. Real cute. Across town, I sat in the upstairs room of a converted brownstone. A friend's place. Quiet neighborhood. Good locks. I wasn't angry. I was focused. Laptop open, dual screens up. One screen had the company's travel policy, downloaded from the HR portal I still had back-end access to. The other? A spreadsheet. Color-coded. Dates, flight logs, receipts, matching timestamps from her social media posts, and internal calendar invites from her assistant's email, publicly viewable if you knew how to look. I sipped black coffee from a chipped mug. Sleep wasn't on the menu tonight. It wasn't about catching her cheating. I'd done that before, years ago. The candle scent that wasn't ours, the hotel room charge on a joint statement, that just a colleague who somehow knew my golf handicap. That game was tired. This time, I was after something else entirely. I opened a folder named Precedent. Inside were documents from 2018, back when her company brought me in as a compliance advisor during a merger. Legal integration, joint policy frameworks, HR coordination. They were implementing new ethics protocols, my protocols. And guess who co-signed the updated clauses? Her. Clause 14C. Undisclosed relationships involving financial benefit or preferential treatment may constitute a breach of fiduciary duty and trigger internal audit procedures. Clause 14D. Failure to report such relationships to compliance may result in disciplinary action, up to and including termination, with cause. No one reads the fine print. Not even the people who sign it. Especially not people like her, who assume the consequences only apply to people without charm. I backed up the folder to 3 different locations. One cloud, one drive, one encrypted SD card. Then I texted an old colleague, now head of compliance at her firm. Just a polite hello, a reminder I still had the original templates. Didn't say more. Didn't need to. He'd be curious. He'd dig. I leaned back, cracked my neck, and finally allowed myself to feel something. Not anger. Not betrayal. Anticipation. The kind you feel before a courtroom door opens. Or a match gets lit. Because I wasn't coming back. And she wasn't going to see the fire until it was already at her heels. Saturday morning, she woke up tangled in white sheets at a vineyard resort that looked like it was built for Instagram influencers and middle-aged execs who want to cosplay authenticity. Her client was still snoring beside her. One arm flopped across the pillow where her wedding ring should have been. She stretched, yawned, checked her phone, and grinned when she saw the likes. Over 5,000 now. Her post was getting traction. My husband can cry. I'm still going. That ridiculous caption had apparently struck a nerve with the girl boss crowd. Dozens of comments called her brave, powerful, unapologetic. Someone even made a TikTok over it, lip-syncing to a Cardi B line while pointing at her post. She giggled, hearted a few of them, then pulled on a robe and padded over to the balcony to take a new selfie. That's when the tag showed up. A reshared version of her post. Same caption, same smug grin. But this one had additions. A stitched carousel of receipts. Not vague guesses, real receipts. Room confirmations with both names. Dinner bills signed by her client, but billed to her department's discretionary account. Photos from her social media geotagged at a boutique hotel she swore she'd never been to. And the kicker? A PDF of overlapping calendar invites showing she had meetings at headquarters while she was actually poolside 120 miles away. Each slide was tagged with the same sarcastic, chilling phrase. Sponsored by love and someone else's silence. She stared at it, mouth open. Someone was using her post like a springboard, like a detonator. Her immediate thought? He did this. Her husband. Except no, this wasn't his style. He didn't do theatrics. Didn't know how to make carousel posts or turn PDF metadata into red flags. And most of all, he never would humiliate her this publicly. That wasn't his angle. He liked quiet leverage, not internet drama. Still, the timing was too perfect. She scrolled down. Dozens of shares. Hundreds of saves. People tagging the company. Comments reading, "Isn't she in HR? And does the board know?" And this aged deliciously. One comment, with a verified badge next to the name, simply said, Clause 14C. You signed it. She blinked. The balcony suddenly felt colder. Then her screen lit up with a message notification. From someone she couldn't ignore. Her boss. Can you explain? That was it. No emoji. No follow-up. Just those 4 words. Clean. Surgical. She took a breath, flipped her hair like she was brushing off dust, and typed back. He's just being petty. I'll handle it Monday. She hit send. Waited. No response. Across the room, her client stirred. Everything okay? She smiled, tight forced. Yeah, just internet trolls. But her phone buzzed again. A second tag. This one had screenshots of a luxury wellness retreat invoice filed under client development. The notes included an intimate dinner description. Her words, copy-pasted from the trip summary she emailed to accounting. She knew because she recognized the typo she made. Inimate instead of intimate. It had stayed in the system. Whoever posted this knew how to dig. Her smile cracked. She turned off her phone and walked into the shower, letting the water run too hot. She needed to think. She needed to find out who was behind this before it spiraled. Because if these receipts kept coming, they wouldn't just question her ethics. They'd start asking about his. Her boss. The board. The shareholders. She wrapped herself in a towel, hands trembling slightly. She had no idea who was feeding this trail of breadcrumbs, but they weren't sloppy. This was a slow, calculated leak, and it wasn't just her marriage on the table. It was her entire career. And the person behind it wasn't looking for attention. They were building a case. Sunday morning came dressed in denial. She sat at the edge of the resort bed, silk robe loosely tied, fresh mimosa sweating in her hand. The sun painted lazy streaks across the floor. On paper, it should have been a relaxing morning. Her client had just ordered breakfast in bed, and they'd made plans to visit some overpriced sculpture garden before a couple's massage she swore to her assistant didn't exist. But her mind wasn't on croissants or Cabernet anymore. Because last night, something shifted. And now, her post, her triumph, was being ripped apart in high-resolution PDFs and public audit logs. She tried to call him. No answer. She texted. Green bubbles. Then tried from her client's phone. Still nothing. Blocked. Entirely. She opened his Instagram. Deactivated. His LinkedIn. Still active. With a new tagline. Independent compliance strategist. Non-disclosure focus policy architect advisor to ethics committees. Her heart stuttered. Since when? She refreshed her email. New message. No subject line. No text. Just an attachment. Join_ethics_review_2018.pdf. She tapped it open. First page. A familiar logo. Her company's. Old formatting. Headers she vaguely remembered. Her name in the distribution list. And then, page 7. Clause 14C. Undisclosed romantic or personal relationships between employees and clients, contractors, or advisors which may result in financial or reputational risk must be disclosed within 14 days of the first interaction that crosses professional boundaries. It was dry legalese, but the implication smacked her in the chest like a brick wrapped in velvet. She kept reading. Page 11. Clause 14D. Failure to disclose such relationships, or attempts to disguise, misrepresent, or falsify the nature of such connections, will result in a mandatory ethics committee review. The review may include disciplinary action, up to and including termination. Her eyes widened. Then she noticed the metadata tab on the file, something most people ignore. She clicked it out of habit. Author, her husband's full name. Created, October 3rd, 2018. Last modified, November 8th, 2018. Contributors, her boss, chief legal officer. She gasped. Actually gasped. He hadn't just known about the clause, he'd written it. Back when her firm was going through that acquisition and they needed external compliance review. He had sat in the very same boardroom she now nervously avoided, helping write the policy that might now sink her. And the worst part? She'd signed off on the document during her HR compliance training, probably while scrolling through Pinterest and pretending to care. There was even a signature line embedded in the PDF. Signed, her name, HR Senior Liaison. Her fingers trembled. She opened the resort room's minibar and downed a miniature vodka bottle without chasing it. Her client mumbled something behind her. She ignored it. She was too busy pulling up every policy folder she could find on her company-issued laptop, hoping to God that someone had amended the document, edited it, buried it under newer jargon. No luck. Clause 14C was still live. She slammed the laptop shut. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't thrown accusations or exposed her to tabloids. He had weaponized the one thing she underestimated, his memory. And now she was trapped in a policy she'd helped implement, but never respected. She paced. This couldn't go public. Not like this. The other board members would smell blood. She needed to talk to someone higher. Someone who could minimize this. Contain it. She opened her phone again. Tried to call her boss. Voicemail. She typed a message, paused, then deleted it. What could she say? Hi. I think my husband just activated an ethics clause I forgot I helped sign. Also, I've been sleeping with someone who's funneling money through reimbursed travel expenses, and now a whistleblower trail is gaining traction under a post I wrote to humiliate him. Hope you're well. No. She needed more information. More leverage. Because suddenly, this wasn't about a marriage. It was a slow, brutal chess match, and she'd just discovered she opened with her king exposed. Monday morning arrived with the crisp, calculated chill of corporate air conditioning and barely disguised stares. She pulled into the parking garage of her company's downtown office tower in her usual self-assured fashion, designer sunglasses, one hand on the steering wheel, the other casually scrolling through a curated feed that had gone unusually quiet. Normally, Monday morning meant a dozen DMs from colleagues asking about her client strategy sessions or where she'd found that dress. Today, radio silence. Still, she brushed it off. Probably weekend hangovers. Or jealousy. Viral fame has a strange effect on people. She swiped her badge at the security gate. The light blinked green. Still employed. Still untouchable. At the elevator, 2 junior associates stepped back to let her in, then didn't follow. Doors closed. She smiled to herself. Floor 23. The reception area greeted her with the usual sterile optimism. Polished floors. Acrylic motivational slogans on the walls. Act with integrity. She never noticed how loud that one was until now. Her assistant wasn't at her desk. Odd. She walked past anyway, heels clicking like punctuation marks, expecting the usual flood of Monday chaos, meeting invites, petty budget questions, department nonsense. But instead, the hallway was hollow. People averted their eyes. One of the interns muttered a hello, then disappeared into a file room. At her office, the nameplate still gleamed. She stepped inside. Laptop, gone. Desk, unusually clean. Whiteboard, wiped. She stood there for a moment, trying to process the static in the air. Her pulse picked up. Not enough to show, but enough to notice. Then she saw them. Through the glass wall of the conference room at the end of the hall, her CEO, the company's lead counsel, 2 members of the HR committee, and the compliance officer who usually worked from the other campus. All seated. All not looking at her. She knocked. No one waved her in. She opened her messaging app and sent a quick ping to her assistant. Hey, where is everyone? What's going on? No reply. She texted again. Nothing. Then her personal phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text only. Ask about Clause 14C. Her mouth went dry. She stared at the message for a full 10 seconds before finally lifting her head and walking, slowly, toward the conference room. The hallway felt longer now. Her heels felt too loud. She opened the door slightly, just enough to step halfway in. Her CEO looked up. His expression wasn't anger. It was surgical, like a surgeon about to make the first cut. Why didn't you disclose it during compliance updates? He asked, voice calm, like he was asking about a printer order. She blinked. I'm sorry. He didn't repeat himself. The HR rep glanced at a folder, then looked away like she couldn't meet her gaze. The compliance officer shifted in his seat. Legal said nothing. Just the question. Hanging. Heavy. Disclosure. Clause 14C. She knew exactly what he meant. And more importantly, so did they. She stepped back, voice dry. Is there an issue with something I filed? The CEO raised a brow, then slowly turned the laptop on the table so she could see the screen. A split image. Left side, her infamous post. Right side, a screenshot of the 2018 policy document. Her signature. Highlighted. Clause 14C. Undisclosed romantic relationships with clients or contractors. Grounds for disciplinary review. And underneath it, a time-stamped email from 6 months ago. Subject. Quarterly compliance confirmation. No conflicts to disclose. Signed by her. She had sent it. She remembered. It was a checkbox form, standard. She hadn't even thought twice. I didn't think that clause was still, she started, but stopped. It sounded worse out loud. Still what? Her CEO asked. Not cruel. Just clinical. The way someone might ask a lab rat why it bit the cheese with the trap, so clearly visible. The silence pressed in. She stepped back fully from the room. Closed the door without another word. Back in her office, the world felt suddenly smaller. Her ears rang. Her stomach flipped. She sat. Looked at her phone again. The message was still there. Ask about Clause 14C. Who had sent it? How did they know? And more importantly, who else already did? Tuesday began with her on the defensive and ended with her unraveling. She hadn't slept. Not really. Tossed between rationalizations and mental gymnastics. The compliance clause, the meeting, the cold stares. It couldn't really stick, could it? People break policies all the time. Affairs weren't exactly rare in the office, and most of them just got a quiet memo or a paid leave and came back like nothing happened. She'd seen it, lived it, handled it, even. But this felt different. Not just because her CEO was suddenly speaking like a deposition attorney, but because everything felt orchestrated. Too precise, too surgical. And the more she thought about it, the more the fog of arrogance lifted, revealing a question she hadn't let herself consider until now. Who was he before me? She always dismissed his early career as some boring compliance thing. He'd mentioned consulting, policy work, some legal reviews, but she tuned it out. Back then, she was the rising star. HR lead by 29. Networking like a machine. Climbing fast. He was stable, supportive, mild-mannered. A man in the background of her ambition. But now it felt like the background had teeth. She pulled out her laptop and started digging. Not just LinkedIn. He'd already scrubbed that. She searched deeper. Old press releases. Corporate filings. PDFs buried in long-forgotten HR newsletters. And there it was. A 2017 article from a mid-tier industry publication. Silent Architects of Accountability. 5 consultants changing corporate ethics from the inside out. Number 3. M.J. Her husband's name. A quiet but potent force in reshaping whistleblower protections and internal audit frameworks for mid-cap firms across the country. She froze. Clicked. It listed half a dozen companies. All firms she recognized. Some had been rocked by internal scandals, only to recover swiftly. Each time, this man, her husband, had been brought in quietly to advise the board, overhaul internal reporting systems, and rewrite policies from the ground up. Then came a quote. "We don't hire him to find problems. We hire him so no one ever knows they existed." She exhaled through her nose. That tight, dizzy kind of breath you get when reality rewrites itself in front of you. Another article, 2 years later. Less polished. A blog post from a former legal intern. He came in and didn't say much. Just asked for document access and a cup of black coffee. Within a week, 2 directors resigned, 3 reimbursement policies were rewritten, and our GC called him the quiet scalpel. I didn't even know he was married. That line hit harder than it should have. She sat back. He wrote the whistleblower policy? That couldn't be right. She opened her firm's internal archive, typed in the document code from the ethics PDF she received on Sunday. The audit trail was visible, co-authored by him, signed off by the board, finalized just months before she officially started sleeping with her client. She clicked on the contributor notes. In the comments section, one line stood out. To protect integrity, silence must be treated as intent. It was his phrasing. She remembered hearing him say something similar at dinner once, years ago, when she joked about office gossip. Back then, she'd laughed and changed the subject. Now it read like a confession, one she never noticed. She kept going. In the legal repository, a file she'd never read but had technically approved in 2020 during a digital signature campaign. A quarterly update to internal reporting protocols. It included a change to the escalation path. In the event a report is submitted with attached corroborating evidence, the ethics committee may bypass department leadership and initiate board-level review directly. She stared at that sentence like it was a landmine with a neon sign. He didn't just know the rules. He built them to bypass her. Suddenly, the weekend post wasn't just a public embarrassment. It was a trigger. A deliberate one. A final straw he'd been waiting for, letting her tighten the noose herself. And now, she realized something far worse than infidelity or revenge. He hadn't planned this last week. He'd been building it for years. Silently, patiently, watching her hang herself with the very threads she assumed were invisible. The power dynamic she thought she owned was never hers. And now, every step she took to fix it only wrapped the wire tighter. The call came at 8:12 a.m., right as she was rehearsing a damage control email she planned to send to her CEO, lightly worded, elusive, heavy on misunderstandings and context. She was sitting in her kitchen, untouched coffee cooling beside her, laptop open to a draft she'd rewritten 6 times. She saw the caller ID and froze. CFO, direct line. She hadn't spoken to him in months. He was the kind of man who lived in quarterly reports and balance sheets, allergic to drama. If he was calling, it wasn't personal. She hesitated, let it ring twice, then answered. Hey, good morning. His voice was calm. Too calm. Morning. We've been contacted by someone who claims to have detailed proof of fraudulent expense reimbursements tied to your client engagements over the past 2 years. Her mouth dried. Her tongue stuck to her teeth. What? They've submitted documentation to our anonymous audit inbox. Very specific dates. Receipts. It looks clean, organized. Intentional. She swallowed. He continued. Would you like us to forward it to legal for review? Or is there context you want to provide before it escalates? She didn't answer, because her brain had already sprinted to the filing system, to the expenses she thought no one noticed. The ones she bundled under vague headers like client development, strategic dinners, and networking events. Half of them were cocktails at boutique hotels. A third were flights she didn't technically need. And a few were just flat-out indulgences. Spa treatments, deep tissue massages, upgraded suites. The kind that felt easy to explain when you were still the rising star everyone adored. But now she saw the paper trail from his eyes. Not the CFO's. His. Every trip. Every indulgence. Every time she came home relaxed and glowing and claimed it was just a work thing, he had logged it. She found her voice. Do you know who submitted it? Not officially, he replied. But well, there was a pause. We noticed the documents are all internally formatted. The attachments include red lines and audit notes. And the reporter's name is embedded in the document metadata. Her fingers curled. Who is it? Another pause. Then he said it. Your husband. Or ex-husband. I'm not clear on the status. She didn't respond. I just thought you'd want the courtesy of being told before we elevate it. Though technically, we're obligated to forward this to our compliance division within 48 hours. He was being formal now, distancing himself. I understand, she said, voice barely audible. Okay, I'll wait until noon. If you want to add clarification or context, send it to me directly. Otherwise, we proceed. Click. She stared at her phone, her heart thudding so loudly it drowned out everything else. She opened her email. There it was, forwarded from her assistant's catch-all inbox. Preliminary expense review, submitted documentation. Dozens of PDFs, each labeled, each with a tag at the bottom. Submitted by, his full name. Role, former consultant, internal ethics and compliance oversight. Signature, digital, verified. The files were structured like legal exhibits. One showed a $4,912 charge at a wine resort in Oregon. 2 guests, suite upgrade, billed to client code JP 223. Another? A 5-day stay in Scottsdale with wellness recovery, listed as a reason for travel, even though no client meetings were scheduled that week. Attached, screenshots of her Instagram posts. Poses by the pool. Caption, detoxing with the best. Each one matched to a reimbursement form. Each form digitally timestamped. And his name was everywhere. He hadn't just filed a complaint. He had built a prosecution. And now she wasn't just a woman who cheated, or a rising executive who cut corners. She was a potential liability, a walking SEC violation, a headline waiting to happen. She stood up, dizzy, gripped the edge of the counter. The room seemed to tilt. It was no longer about emotions or revenge. It was about fraud. And the man she once dismissed as dull, he had quietly prepared a legal noose and handed one into her company. She was no longer fighting to save her marriage. She was now trying to survive her own paper trail. Thursday morning, she woke up already halfway to panic. No nightmares, no phone alerts, just that creeping, suffocating stillness. The kind that tells you everyone else already knows what you're pretending isn't happening. The CFO hadn't called back. Legal hadn't responded. Her assistant had stopped replying altogether. The office Slack thread had gone quiet whenever her name popped up. She needed help. She needed control. And there was only one person left who might still be in her corner. Alex. They'd gone to college together. Shared coffee and secrets during law exams. He was the reason she even landed her job, back when he was already embedded in legal and whispered her name during a restructuring wave. They weren't close anymore, but there was a time when he knew all her flaws and still vouched for her. She scrolled to his name in her contacts, hovering for a second before hitting call. 2 rings. 3. He answered on the 4th. Hey, she breathed. A pause. Then, hey. She clutched the phone tight, walking into the bathroom and locking the door even though she was alone. Her voice dropped into a practiced whisper, the one she used when she needed someone to think she was fine. I need to talk to you. Just for a second. Another pause. Then a sigh. He came to me first, Alex said quietly. Her stomach dropped. What? Last week. Before anything went public. Before your post. She blinked. What did he show you? Everything. She sat on the toilet lid, mouth suddenly dry. But, you didn't say anything? I didn't think it would escalate like this, he admitted. I didn't know you'd gone this far. That stung worse than she expected. I didn't mean for any of this to. I'm not your lawyer, okay? He cut in, but not harshly. Just tired. I didn't document the conversation. He didn't ask me to, but he had receipts, documents, compliance timelines, matching data. It was surgical. She closed her eyes. Please, Alex. Please. Just slow it down. Pause the review. I just need time to figure out what's real. I can't. Her eyes snapped open. It's out of my hands now, he said. The CEO's furious. He's already briefed the board. They're calling an emergency session this afternoon. No, she whispered. No, Alex, please. You owe me. I covered for you during the acquisition fallout, remember? You had that non-disclosure breach, and I helped you bury it. That was 10 years ago, but I still did it. Silence. I'm sorry, he said. She gripped the edge of the sink so hard her knuckles whitened. You don't understand. If this hits the board, they won't just terminate me. They'll blacklist me. They'll flag me for misconduct. I'll lose my license. I know. I will lose everything. Another silence. Then he said something that gutted her. You already did. The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Familiar. Final. He added, gently. You might want to start thinking about counsel. Real counsel. Outside the company. She couldn't speak. I have to go. Click. The line went dead. Her hand was still gripping the phone, but now it shook. Visibly. Her nails dug into her own palm, and she didn't loosen her grip. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, trying to summon some version of herself that still looked capable. The woman who got promotions, who dazzled at conferences, who controlled rooms with a smile and a well-timed laugh. But all she saw was the beginning of collapse. Every bridge was burning behind her, and the man she'd humiliated wasn't chasing her. He was simply standing at the other side of the river, watching the fire do what it was always going to do. Friday, 6:42 a.m. Her phone erupted like a siren in a war zone. 7 missed calls. 3 voicemails. 2 messages from the head of PR, flagged urgent. 1 from the CFO, timestamped 5:19 a.m. And at the top, her CEO's number, calling again, now for the 4th time in less than an hour. She answered with a groggy, shaken hello. No greeting. Just his voice, sharpened into a scalpel. Why didn't you tell me who your husband really was? She blinked, heart hammering against her ribcage. What are you? Don't play dumb. Not today, he snarled. You made him look like a doormat. You made me think he was a harmless ex-consultant with a soft job title and no spine. And now I've got legal combing through Q1 reimbursements, 2 stakeholders threatening to pull out, and press inquiries from 3 different financial blogs. She sat up in bed, fully awake now, the cold air biting her skin through the silk sheets. What press? What are they saying? He ignored her. You had access, you had responsibility, and you lied to my face. But the worst part? The absolute worst part. She said nothing. He cited me. By name. In the whistleblower memo. Her breath caught. Attached to the memo, he continued, almost hissing now, is a timeline. A breakdown of policy violations. And at the bottom, a section titled Institutional Complicity. That's where my name shows up. In bold. She opened her email mid-call, scrolling furiously. There it was, subject line, formal complaint, internal ethics breach, full documentation. It had been CC'd to every board member, legal, and compliance. And at the top, her husband's name. Official. Signed. Timestamped. The PDF had a cover sheet. Submitted under whistleblower policy #WC14C. Compliant with internal escalation clause 14D. Reporter. His full name. Affiliation. Former consultant. Ethics architecture. 2017 to 2019. Status. External whistleblower. Risk assessment level. Severe. She scrolled. Her fingers moved, but her mind lagged behind. Each section was crisp. Documented. Highlighted in color-coded segments. Financial discrepancies, policy violations, unreported personal benefits, false filings. Internal emails. Screenshots of her Slack messages discussing smoothing out expense codes. Even one where she joked, if anyone audits this, I'll just blame Janice. And then the quote. Right there, at the end of the institutional complicity section. My CEO was aware of my relationship. He told me, quote, if it keeps the client happy, I don't care what label you use. She remembered that moment. A cocktail party. Soft lighting. her CEO laughing into a martini glass. She had mentioned her client dinners and how close they'd become. That's what he'd said. Offhand. A joke. He never thought it'd end up in a whistleblower document filed with time-stamped evidence, attached to 10 pages of itemized reimbursements with her initials on every single one. The voice in her ear snapped her back to the moment. I've got investors asking me if this is a culture issue. If we buried a sex-for-access scheme under client strategy. If we're the next damn headline. She opened the attachment again, hands numb. Appendix E, Public Relations Risk. Suggested timeline for press leak. Preemptive narrative or reactive scramble. He even had media risk mitigation options laid out. He wasn't trying to get her fired. He was preparing the company for a controlled burn, one they couldn't smother. I have a lawyer meeting me at 9 a.m., the CEO continued. I don't care what you say now. You are suspended, effective immediately, pending the external review. She gripped the phone tighter, voice cracking. You're basing everything on his word? No, he said, his voice going icy. I'm basing it on yours. On the 117 pages of documentation that include your digital signature, your Slack history, and your expense logs. She felt her heart thudding against her ribs like it wanted out. Like even it didn't want to stay in this body anymore. Click. He hung up. She stared at the ceiling, then at the curtains, then at her own reflection in the black screen of her tablet. The woman who once said, he can cry if he wants, I'm still going, had just watched the entire company go with him. And she hadn't even gotten out of bed yet. Same morning, 9:02 a.m. While she sat paralyzed in a fog of ruined reputation, sealed conference doors, and corporate fallout, he was somewhere else, miles away, in a modest conference center with polished floors and terrible carpeting, standing behind a simple podium. No theatrics, no revenge speech, no names, just a slide behind him in stark black and white. What happens when integrity goes silent? The audience wasn't massive, maybe 50. Industry professionals, compliance officers, legal consultants, and a few ethics students who didn't yet understand what the real world does to people who trust too easily. The live stream had another 100 watching remotely. One of them, though she didn't know it yet, was her CFO. He stood calmly, his tie just slightly loose, not out of sloppiness but comfort. The room was pin-drop quiet. My first job, he began, was auditing corporate reimbursements for a company that no longer exists. And it doesn't exist because no one listened when the policy got signed. They thought paperwork was boring. They thought silence meant approval. They were wrong. He clicked to the next slide. A timeline, generic looking, but built off the same structure he'd used in the memo. No one wakes up and decides to dismantle something. It happens slowly. And sometimes, silence is a gift. Until it isn't. He walked them through clauses, case studies, abstracts. But even through the professionalism, there was something personal in every word. When the people you trust the most start treating compliance like a formality, when integrity becomes an accessory instead of a foundation, that's when you know you've already lost the room. Slide change. Now a simple quote in white on black. Ethics is what you do when no one is watching. Whistleblowing is what happens when someone finally does. He glanced at the camera. The lens blinked silently. Streaming live. Broadcasting to every corner of a corporate world that once ignored him. And in that moment, he wasn't petty. He wasn't vengeful. He was right. Some people think silence is weakness, he said, voice steady, calm. But sometimes, it's just the sound of someone choosing their moment. He didn't say her name. Didn't need to. The audience gave a polite round of applause. He nodded, clicked off the remote, and stepped down from the podium with the grace of a man who had already won. Somewhere else, across town, in a too-quiet apartment, her phone buzzed again. Another email. From the CEO. Subject line, formal notice, status change. You are hereby suspended, effective immediately, pending the results of the external review. We strongly suggest you retain legal counsel. Any further internal communication should go through formal legal channels. No warmth. No room for interpretation. No more illusions of control. She dropped the phone. Didn't scream. Didn't cry. Because there was no one left to perform for. She turned, staring out the window at a city that kept moving, uncaring. The skyline didn't blink. The world didn't pause. And somewhere, on a laptop still open to the live stream, the last image of him lingered, smiling faintly, thanking the audience, exiting stage left without fanfare. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't begged. He'd just waited. And when the time was right, he made sure she heard the silence.